Okay, we know the Switch 2 is coming. With all these leaks, we can more or less assume the Switch U is just a little over a year away. There's a surprisingly large amount of stuff we know about this system already, but it's some of the stuff we don't know yet that's nerve-wracking. So how about we learn everything we can about the Switch U months before we even get Mario Wonder. And along with that, figure out what on earth is going to be done with the dying Switch 1. With the leaks we got from Video Game Chronicle, we know a few solid things about the next-gen console, particularly that it'll be using cartridges. Now, that's something that we'll be talking more about in a minute, but right now, I want to say just the fact that we're using cartridges alone practically guarantees it will be a Switch 2. I mean, it was a pretty obvious choice, but it's always good to see Nintendo making the right choice. Now, I suppose they could still do something dumb like call it the Switch U instead of the Switch 2, but that's a future I can live with. In the meantime, with these cartridges, we gotta ask, how about the backwards compatibility? Seems like a simple solution. Nintendo just does the smart thing and does it. It's the best way to get anyone with the first Switch to buy it. And if not that, then it allows all future Switch 2 owners to instantly have access to the best catalog of Nintendo games and third-party games on a Nintendo console. So it's a no-brainer, right? Well, I wish. First of all, there's been reports that the Switch 2 will host a new cartridge format. There's a few things this could mean. The best outcome is that it's just a little tab or something, similar to the 3DS cartridges, to prevent it from fitting into the Switch. It's definitely not a deal breaker for backwards compatibility. Although alternatively, it could use completely different internals in the cartridge, namely 3D NAND, which is something I never heard of until 2 days ago. But ultimately, it could affect the compatibility between systems. I'm not even close to an expert on that, so I'll let someone else enlighten us. Now, I'd say the worst possible outcome for the Switch 2 is a completely new cartridge format from the original. It doesn't have to remove compatibility. I mean, in the past we had all different types of Game Boy cartridges, and while the cards themselves were similar, they weren't exact copies. Ideally, I'd just say the Switch 2 uses the same cartridge with maybe a tab on it. From the current sources, nothing is elaborated beyond the cartridge is different. So we can only guess. Now, if that's not a problem, then what's stopping the Switch 2 from backwards compatibility? And as always, it's the life of the party, third parties. We don't know which ones in particular, but apparently many studios have been requesting for the console to not support backwards compatibility due to poor attach rates on the PS5 and Series consoles. And it's been said elsewhere, but the simplest reason for that isn't backwards compatibility, but cross-generational games. Now, especially with the increase to $70 for 9th gen video games, you should ask why anyone would rather get a brand new $70 game for their shiny new box that runs maybe 20% better, when you could instead get the brand new $60 game or less pre-owned for their not as brand new console but still works for the brand new console, for it to only slightly look worse on certain types of TVs. Now, you gotta remember, I'm a Nintendo fan, so I couldn't tell the difference between 1440p and 4K if it watched me while I slept for a month. But I think it becomes a pretty obvious choice to get the cross-release from the older platform. And that's the major problem with these publishers' demands, in quotes, because releasing games on the old and new hardware is overall just a bad idea for sales and the console itself. For the Switch 2, I don't really expect them to do cross-releases for most, if not almost all games. There's maybe one or two new games I can really think of that would be released on both, and that's mainly Metroid Prime 4. I personally expect Nintendo to do the same thing they did with Breath of the Wild and just release it on both platforms, because they initially said it would come on Switch, but I fully expect it to take advantage of the new hardware. One last thing for the developers' concern of cross-gen games. Do they really expect to run a game made for Switch 2 on the original Switch? It struggles enough with Tears of the Kingdom. And that's something I want to bring up. The Switch 2 by all means should have backwards compatibility, but knowing Nintendo, there could be some caveats. If the third parties do continue to fight tooth and nail about backwards compatibility, I think it's entirely possible for it to be only first-party Nintendo games, and possibly digital only as well. At the very least, I think Nintendo would be out of its mind to not include first-party backwards compatibility. I mentioned the Switch library earlier, and that's a pretty big point in all of this. Even if it was just first-party compatibility, that would still bring all of the best performing games of pretty much every Nintendo series. Best-selling Mario Kart, best Smash, best Pikmin, both of the best Zeldas. Now, if it does have these games, what I need to know is if 60 FPS Tears of the Kingdom is in my future. Tears of the Kingdom struggles on Switch. That's not news. Even after a year of polish, it's lucky to be getting 30 frames, and frame drops are often. In the case of this game, it's not incompetence or laziness causing the bad performance, it was the Switch. I think we've all been surprised by what the Switch has been able to play the past few years, but it's a crime to leave Tears of the Kingdom on that system. But when it's brought to the Switch U, will I just be able to pop in my Switch cartridge and get 60 FPS 1440p? Well, Nintendo is a business, so I'm gonna go with, I bet they're taking the PS5 route. You can play all your original games on it, but they'll probably stay locked at the original FPS and quality. For the Switch 2 version, you'll probably be paying a $10 fee at the most. Now, that sort of suggests they'll re-release Switch games on the Switch 2, but I don't know if that could happen. I probably expect DLC bundle re-releases, but probably not cut and dry same games. It's also likely they'll just release patches for most games, boosting performance, but I don't want to discredit the upgrade fee idea, because from what I know, Nintendo technically started the trend with the Wii U Virtual Console, having a small fee if you wanted to upgrade your Wii Virtual Console games. Rest in peace, Wii U eShop. Just food for fodder. But something guaranteed to be free is you subscribing to my channel, and I suppose if you like to pay, you could join my membership for 99 cents with a community Discord. But right now, everything is still a work in progress, and I hope to provide more incentives in the future, so join if you want. Now, there's a few last things I want to talk about with these leaks. First off, with games like Super Mario Bros. Wonder, I would be very surprised if they left it behind on the Switch. I mean, it could certainly get a few million sales during the few months before the announcement, but if they announced a Switch 2 without backwards compatibility, it wouldn't necessarily kill the current Switch games, and definitely not with the average family user base, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was a noticeable drop in sales. It's always speculative, but I wouldn't be the one to make that choice if I had the opportunity. On other news, Switch Online still sucks. Nintendo always talks about wanting to bring over as much of the Switch install base as possible to the Switch 2, and Switch Online / Nintendo Network can help with that from features like cloud saves and friends, but maybe it's just the fact that I've used online services that don't suck, but Nintendo Online is just not worth it for online. Nintendo Switch Online is perfect for a retro game subscription service. So why is it labeled Nintendo Switch Online with the games as a bonus? They're the main feature after all, and the bonus is the online. Bad online, but it's online. It's a tangent, but to avoid myself from needing an entire video about it right now, it had to be said. And besides, it's another thing the Switch 2 will... Well, let's face it, it'll still sell with bad online, but it'd be nice. So anyways, Switch 2 is coming. Yay! Now let's make sure we don't have to abandon our games on a drifting old console, and let us bring them to the Switch U. That's all for today. Eat food, keep cool.